Been riding my bike for all over New Zealand really for the last 30 years. And I'm just delighted that Adventure South is finally setting up a North Island depot. And that's going to enable us to expand our repertoire of trips up here. The company was started in the South Island 30 years ago itself. And I guess not surprisingly, its focus has therefore been on the South Island since the beginning. We have been offering trips in the North Island for some years, but really not to any great extent or grand scale. So the new depot is going to change that. And having lived in the North Island for many years, I've been a keen advocate for expanding our presence up here. I know what an amazing place it is, and especially when experienced on a bike. So that I guess the differences between the South Island and the North Island in a nutshell. The South Island is famous for its dramatic mountains, its glaciers, glacial lakes. The North Island's beauty is just as extraordinary, but just in a different way. So the North Island's beauty comes from the geothermal activity, the native bush, the beaches, the rolling farmland, the rivers. And in addition to that, the North Island is also home to the majority of the New Zealand Maori population. So the rich Maori culture and history that's so integral to New Zealand life is evident throughout the North Island. And I think it's this combination of the natural wonders together with the Maori culture that is just totally unique. And that's what makes the North Island a pretty special place actually in the world. Now, our new itineraries, we've deliberately focused on the central North Island. It's an area of the North Island that I guess is overall less populated. And we're mostly looking to explore the more remote parts of the island, which many Kiwis haven't actually even ventured to. We're fortunate to have a network of cycle trails throughout this country. They've been developed over the last 20 years. There are 23 trails that are designated great rides. These are mostly off-road cycling and mountain biking trails. They go through fantastic landscapes. And also, in addition to the great rides, we have a selection of trails that are designated heartland rides. And these are mostly on-road routes, and they also go through really scenic landscapes and small towns. So it's a combination of great rides and heartland rides that are actually forming the backbone of the itineraries that we've developed. Very much focused on backcountry North Island, away from the traffic, through native bush, rolling farmland, along the coastlines, through the geothermal landscapes. Okay. So we've got 5 itineraries that we've introduced. So some of them you can see there, some are actually on quiet sealed roads. Some are on a mix of seal and gravel. And we've got the one at the bottom there, which is a little bit more technical, and it covers 4 of the North Island's great rides. So what I want to do now is just take a closer look at each one of those itineraries so you get a better idea of what we do and where we go and how the days will roll. The first one is the Central Volcanic Plateau Loop. And as its name suggests, this trip explores an area that's covered with volcanoes, lava plateaus, crater lakes, and the landscapes that we go through have basically been formed as a result of volcanic activity. The picture you see on the right-hand side there is really a typical landscape formed by volcanic activity, and it's now part of the rugged farming country of that area. And as well as riding through that sort of really fascinating I have to admit, it's a bit lumpy sort of landscape. Other highlights of the trip include experiencing geothermal activity, getting really up close and personal with the Māori culture. And there are also opportunities for those that are interested to visit Hobbiton and or the underground glowworm caves in the village of Waitomo. So this map shows the route that the trip follows. So it starts and finishes on the shores of Lake Taupo, which you see right at the bottom of the screen there. You see just the top little bit of it. It's actually the largest freshwater lake in Australasia. It's about the size of Singapore. And it also is the crater of one of the largest volcanic eruptions that the Earth has experienced in the last 5,000 years. So it's a pretty special lake for all sorts of reasons. From there, we actually head north and we go up to the Rotorua Lakes, also formed from volcanic activity. These lakes are steeped in Māori history. They're considered a treasure to the local Māori tribe, and they're just a really significant area for all New Zealanders, the Rotorua Lakes. I'll just divert off a little bit and tell you a wee bit more about what we'll be doing in Rotorua. So one of the things, apart from riding our bikes, is we'll get to experience one of the lakes, Lake Rotuiti, from a totally unique floating, I mean, I think it's a work of art, actually, so let's call it a floating work of art. It's called the Airstream Project, and it will take us on a cruise of the lake. And within the lake, there are natural thermal springs. So when we get to natural thermal springs, you can see the boat actually, you can open the boat out and you can get off, stick your toes in the warm water, you can sit in it, you can almost swim in it, to be honest. We'll also be visiting little coves that have got native bush all around and visiting historic Māori food storage areas. The project can't actually get into those caves, into the food storage caves, but we can get off the boat and swim into them if the weather is good enough to do so, which it's bound to be. It's bound to be. It's always perfect lake in the perfect weather in the North Island. Also in Rotorua, we'll get to visit Waiotapu, which is one of the geothermal parks in the area. And you can just see there, it's an absolute wonderland of geothermal activity. They're fascinating places to visit. So we'll get to spend a little bit of time there. And the other thing that we'll be doing in Rotorua is it's a really unique opportunity to experience the culture and traditions of the Māori. And we've chosen to do this in a really personal way. So we actually go to visit a local Māori family in their home. They will cook a traditional Māori dinner for us. And during that dinner, we'll share their stories of their lifestyle, their history, their culture. So I think that evening will be a real highlight for everybody. I think it'll be pretty special and really very unique. Just back up to the map. So from Rotorua, we then head northwest. So heading up to the town of Cambridge. And Cambridge is known as the town of trees and champions. The reason for that is it's got lots and lots of leafy trees, leafy streets, leafy lined streets, and it's also got multiple thoroughbred horse studs. Fortunately for us, it also boasts some delightful backcountry riding, and it happens to be close to Hobbiton. So this is the Hobbiton movie set. It was a really significant location that was used in both the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbiton trilogies. And it served as a stand-in for the town of Hobbiton in the Shire in both of those trilogies. It was built on a farm near to Cambridge in that region for the movies, and it's remained there. It's incredibly lifelike, and it's now, I guess it's a permanent fixture and operates as a tourist attraction and really quite unique. So anybody who's into the Hobbits, in fact, even if you're not into the Hobbits, it's actually quite an interesting place to visit. We then head south from Cambridge. We travel bike through really rich farming country, and we'll reach the village of Waitomo. It's just a small place, but it's very well known for its extensive underground caving system. And within that caving system, there are massive populations of glowworms that you can see here that really light up all of the caves. So again, if you're interested, it's optional, but there'll be the opportunity to take a tour, similar to one you see here, where you'll both be walking through the caves and traveling through the caves in a small boat, just like the one you see there. So that's Waitomo. And then our final destination on this first trip is the small rural village of Piu Piu. Not too many tourists in Piu Piu, I have to say, so we might stand out a wee bit, but it's a great spot to hang out, and I think to enjoy our final dinner, surrounded by locals in what is effectively the local village pub. So kind of a great way to finish off that trip. So on to the second itinerary, and this one is Mount Taranaki and the Forgotten World. And it's so named very aptly, actually. Sorry, I've missed the screen there. As we travel through New Zealand's oldest heritage trail, and it's known as the Forgotten Highway. From there, we actually go around Mount Taranaki that you can see there, and that is New Zealand's second highest mountain. And it also has one of the most symmetrical volcanic cones in the world. It's really a very special place for the people of Taranaki. And then from Taranaki, from going around the mountain, we then travel out, and you can see where the route goes there out to the wild west coast. So that's the Tasman Sea, and I've got a little shot of that here. It looks actually pretty calm there, but believe me, it can get pretty wild on that west coast. If you look really hard, you might catch the coastline of our West Island, which is otherwise known as Australia. So that's a little bit over there beyond the horizon. So during this Mount Taranaki and the Forgotten Highway trip, we also will get to stay here at the Whangamomana Hotel. It's a very historic hotel, and it's in the remote village of Whangamomana. Now, you might see there that underneath the hotel sign, it says Home of the Republic. And that's because Whangamomana, it might only have a population of about 50 people, but it is actually a self-proclaimed independent republic and has been so since 1989. Now, the reason for declaring themselves as a republic was because back in 1989, the local council were trying to move the boundaries, the regional boundaries. And in doing so, it would have meant that Whangamomana moved from the region of Taranaki into the region of Whanganui Manawatu. And the locals were not happy about that. So they'd been in Taranaki forever and a day, and they didn't really want to shift. So they decided instead they would declare themselves to be a republic. They are a republic still today. They host a Republic Day celebration every 2 years to commemorate the declaration. And if you happen to be lucky enough to be there on that day, you'll get to see sheep racing down the main street and the swearing in of the new president. Just bear in mind that previous presidents have included a goat and a poodle. So yeah, it's quite an eclectic place, Whangamomana. It also has its own passport, so you can purchase your own passport and get it stamped while you're there. On to our third itinerary, which is Mount Ruapehu and the Three Rivers. So this one is centered around two neighboring regions, the regions of Manawatu and Whanganui. Both of them are somewhat out of the way, pretty remote. They have stunning scenery, and they're also full of really fascinating Māori and European history. Highlights of the trip, they include spectacular riding amongst some really stunning rivers. And often the backdrop to the riding will be Mount Ruapehu that you can see here, which is the North Island's largest mountain. It's also volcanic. And again, it's a really historic mountain, both for the Māori and for the Europeans. You can see here the actual route that we follow through and around those two regions. We will get pretty up close and personal with one of the rivers in particular, which is the Whanganui River. This is New Zealand's third longest river, and owing to its importance to the region's Māori people, it actually became the very first waterway in the world to be granted legal personhood. What that actually means is the river itself has the same rights and responsibilities as a person. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an indication of how special the river and the Whanganui region are. We'll get the opportunity to bike on a beautiful sealed road that's very quiet that runs alongside the river, but we'll also get the opportunity to have an on-river adventure that will involve jet boating and canoeing on the river. You can see how beautiful that is with the native bush on both sides. And that adventure will be hosted again by a local Māori family. So during the experience, they will share with us their stories of the river back through the generations, and what the river has meant to their ancestors and what it means to them today. Okay, by contrast, on that same trip, we'll also be hosted by descendants of one of the earliest European settlers in the area. That's the McIntyre family. They emigrated from Glasgow in Scotland back in 1865, and they purchased a large piece of land in remote Manawatu. And the current family members have since built this lodge that you can see in the picture here. It's Makora Lodge, and that's where we'll be enjoying our final night's accommodation and dinner on the Mount Ruapehu and Three Rivers trip. On to our fourth itinerary, and this itinerary heads over to the east coast of the central North Island. So the sea that you see there is actually the Pacific Ocean. This area is the Hawke's Bay region, and it's known for a number of things: Art Deco architecture, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. It has stunning beaches. They're white sand beaches on the east coast as opposed to the more black sand rocky beaches on the west. And also it's home to internationally renowned vineyards and wineries. So hence the trip name, and I'll just pop back up. You'll see there the trip name, Hawke's Bay Art Deco and Vineyards Loop. The highlights of this trip, they really reflect the region's character. So we will get to explore the Art Deco town of Napier. We'll also get to bike on the Hawke's Bay trails, which are actually one of New Zealand's great rides. We'll stay, and you can see it here in the picture. We're going to be staying in one of the early European homesteads, and we'll also get to visit and have a tasting at one of the world-class wineries in the region. So there's a lot of highlights on this particular trip. I'm just going to skip to the talk about Napier to start with. Napier is one of the region's main towns, and it's renowned as the Art Deco capital of the world. So it's not even the Art Deco capital of New Zealand, it goes bigger. I guess the reason for that is the concentration, the high concentration of Art Deco buildings. Many of those came about. The region was struck by an earthquake back in 1931. Pretty much the whole of Napier was destroyed by that earthquake. And as a result, it was rebuilt in the architecture of that era, which was Art Deco. So one of the highlights of the trip will be a walk through the town hosted by a guide who will bring Napier's architectural history to life for us. I've experienced the guided walk, and it really is quite amazing. I didn't really know anything about Art Deco, but by the end of that trip, I mean, I wasn't a master at it, but I was a keen student, shall we say. Okay, just ducking back up. So the Hawke's Bay cycle trails that we'll be enjoying, they meander through vineyards and orchards. They go along the coastline. And much of the time, the trails are overlooked by Tomato Peak, which is the big range that you see in the back of this picture. So that range was formed 2 million years ago when the sea floor basically tilted and shifted and created the landform that we now know as Tomato Peak. Now, for those that are keen, you will have the opportunity to ride up Tomato Peak, so to conquer it by bike. You will also have the option to just hop in the van if you prefer to just get a lift up. But once you get to the top, you'll be rewarded by the most marvelous views right across the region. That's the Heritonga Plains that you see there, and the Pacific Ocean in the far background. So yeah, it's worth getting up there somehow. Okay. Sorry, just juggling about a wee bit. But I wanted to finish with this one, which is where we will finish this particular itinerary. And that is staying at one of the original European homes in the area. It's called Wallingford Homestead. It was built in the 1890s by the Ormond family, and actually is reputed to be the largest single-story house in the Southern Hemisphere. It's a really, really special place. It's now run as a luxury retreat, and we thought that it would be a pretty good place to end this particular tour on, where there's a big emphasis on beautiful food and wine. So we will enjoy obviously staying in the original buildings, the original bedrooms. Having said that, they've been beautifully renovated. There are lovely living spaces and also beautiful gardens and a swimming pool. Whilst we're there, we're hosted by Chris and Jeanette. They are restaurateurs by profession. They made a name for themselves in Sydney. They won a slew of awards at their own restaurant there called Little Jean. And then they came back to Chris's homeland here, and brought with them, I guess, their much loved modern, fresh and seasonal take on food. So we've tried to showcase a little bit of that. It's kind of hard to show in photographs, but believe me, the food is outstanding and a wonderful way to finish this particular trip. So on to our final itinerary to talk about. This is dedicated to 4 of the North Island's great rides. So there's the Timber Trail, the Waikato River Trail, the Great Lakes Trail, and the Rotorua Forest Trail. Now, this itinerary does require a little bit more technical skill. All of the trails are off-road, and some of the sections include some moderate single track, and that can have some tight corners, a little bit of exposure, perhaps the odd tree root, the odd muddy bit. So it does require a little bit more skill in terms of riding a bike. That said, the trails are purpose-built and they're well maintained. They go through extraordinary landscapes and scenery, and there's just multiple highlights actually. So just thinking through it, the highlights include what's considered to be one of the last intact podocarp forests in the world. One of them goes alongside New Zealand's longest river. Another one is all around New Zealand's largest lake. And we also get to visit a waterfall that's renowned as one of New Zealand's most photographed natural wonders. So yeah, there's highlights throughout this particular trip to enjoy. This particular shot is one of the many swing bridges that you'll cross on the timber trail. And the timber trail travels through the ancient Puriora forest. It's home to incredible bird life that nest in the native bush. Now, whilst we're on the timber trail, we also have the wonderful opportunity to spend 2 nights at the remote off-grid Timber Trail Lodge. And it's literally in the middle of the Puriora forest, and it's halfway through the trail. So we get to enjoy 2 nights here, and it's a really, really fabulous experience. The forest loop in Rotorua, that overlooks a number of lakes and also goes through all sorts of different types of forest. So it's yeah, it's a wonderful 32K loop that's relatively easy when it comes to off-road riding. The Waikato River Trail, not surprisingly, goes alongside the Waikato River, which is New Zealand's longest river. It starts its life on the eastern flanks of Mount Ruapehu, and it flows through to our largest lake, Lake Taupo. A stunning river, and that's what we'll be following on the Waikato River Trail. And as far as Lake Taupo is concerned, here we are back at Lake Taupo, and this is our biggest lake, and the Great Lakes Trail is actually a selection of trails that all travel close to the lake side. So that those particular trails again have wonderful views, as you can see there. And finally, the Hooker Falls, which I made reference to. This is considered to be one of New Zealand's most photographed natural wonders. The picture truly does not do it justice. You need to be there to really feel the volume of water that goes through this small channel is really quite extraordinary. So bringing each trip alive will be a team of highly talented, they're really special professional guides. They're all good at sharing their knowledge of this country's natural wonders, its history, its culture. They're also pretty good at whipping up a mean morning tea that you can see there. And they also take great care in ensuring that the bikes that you're able to rent from us, if you choose to, are in good order and ready for you to ride each day. The bikes can either be just normal standard, what we call acoustic, non-electric bikes, or we also do have a large fleet of electric bikes for anybody who wants a little bit of extra assistance. And this final slide really just depicts, I guess we've had over 30 years of experience guiding trips, so I think we kind of feel we're reasonably good at what we do. You can always get better, but I think these pictures reflect the consistently positive reviews that we receive from many of our guests who have trusted us to deliver their chosen holiday. Many of them come back again and again, and that really is, I guess, the highest compliment. So thank you for listening to me and for joining me on this webinar. I hope you found the talk interesting and of value. Very happy to answer any questions, or to try to at least. And if not, I do hope that at some point in the near future, you come and join us in the North Island on one of our itineraries.
Yeah, great presentation, Sue. That was awesome to hear. We actually do have a couple of questions that have come through, and whilst we're going through them, if anyone else has any questions, there is a question box, so just pop your questions in there and Sue will be able to answer them. But the first one we have is, could you tell us a bit more about the Maori experience?
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's on the first tour.
Yeah, so that's on our we have a number of different Maori experiences on a couple of the trips, but probably the one that you're referring to is in Rotorua, so it's on our central volcanic plateau loop. And we've formed a relationship with the local tribe there. And as a result of that, we are able to join local Maori families and be hosted in their own homes to a typical Maori dinner that they will cook for us. And whilst we're enjoying dinner, they will also share stories with us of their culture, their history, their families. So it's a very, very personal experience, and it will just be unique for us, for our group. So that's that particular experience in Rotorua. And one other that I will refer to is also the experience on the Whanganui River, which is the Mount Ruapehu and Three Rivers trip. And that is when we're on the water. The Whanganui River is of very deep Maori significance, and so we have chosen this particular adventure to include in this trip, which will be hosted by a local family that have lived on the side of the Whanganui River for generations. So we will get to enjoy the experience of hearing their stories and, in particular, what the river has meant to them and their forefathers.
Wow, that's awesome. So the second one is, what bikes would you recommend to ride on these tours?
Yep. It kind of varies actually, depending on which trip you choose. So there are a couple of the trips that are all on sealed roads. So in that situation, you could ride either a standard road bike or you could use a straight handlebar, what I call a straight handlebar kind of hybrid bike, or you could use one of our electric bikes. We also have a fleet of again, straight bar bikes that have slightly fatter tires, maybe a little bit more comfortable than a typical road bike. So any of those would be suitable for those trips. And in fact, probably for the trips that are on a mix of seal and gravel, um, the bikes I've just talked about, the straight handlebar bikes are ideal for those. We also have some gravel bikes that would be suitable, and equally the electric bike fleet would be perfect as well. For the one that's focused on the great rides, which requires a little bit more technical skill, um, you could ride those trails on what I call a hardtail mountain bike with just front suspension. You'd have a bit more comfort on a dual suspension. And also, again, our e-mountain bikes are suitable for that trail as well.
Yep, great. And I mean, if you are inquiring about one of these trips, you can always email us what bikes you would prefer as well, and we'll be able to take it from there. The third question would be, will we have downtime on these tours to explore the towns we visit?
Yeah, we do think that that's really important. I mean, yes, it is a bike trip, but equally important to us is that you get to really experience the places that you visit. And to do that, you need to have the time to do that. So, as well as obviously the off the bike activities and experiences that we have included, there will be time for you to have a bit of downtime to do your own exploring, or if you want to just literally relax and chill, you can do that as well. So, yeah, we do try to make sure we've got an element of that in each of the trips too.
Amazing. And I just want to say thank you so much, Sue, for officially launching the North Island expansion of our trips.
Great.
I hope that everyone can jump online, have a look at the trips, and now that you might have a better insight into what to expect. And we hope to see you on this season on our trails.